Good afternoon. Welcome to FEBRABAN TECH 2025. Can you hear me well? Please raise your hands if you are.
A crescente demanda por
This
níveis de
increasing
processamento
demand
cada
for processing levels, greater levels of processing for AI has driven advancements in quantum computing and the search for new processor paradigms. Organic semiconductors, two-dimensional material like a graphene, optical chips, and carbon nanotube chips have emerged as promising alternatives to the limited silicon chips, offering breakthroughs in efficiency and performance. These technologies could represent a significant leap in processing capabilities with the potential to solve complex problems far beyond the reach of classical
no
computers.
setor financeiro, elas
In the financial sector, they are poised to become essential infrastructure, transforming both customer interactions and operational efficiency.
estamos beyond silicon também no Brasil?
Are we beyond silicon here in Brazil? Silvana Luiza, the IT executive at Banco do Brasil, will help us to answer this question.
Rodrigo Capaz,
Rodrigo Capaz, director at the National
brasileira de física,
he is the president of the Physics Brazilian
diretor
Society, and
executivo
he's
da
and
Gerdau
also we
Grafini.
also see the director of Gerdau Graffini.
Primeiro eu quero agradecer a presença
First of all, I would like to thank you so much for your time and presence. Although this might seem a very scientific topic, this will also have a serious repercussion for financial
com mais poder de
services, so
processamento.
we can offer greater processing
Então,
and
eu gostaria
data technology.
para
So I
você
would like to ask you a few questions about this potential practical application in the financial sector in the years ahead.
Rodrigo.
Rodrigo,
Nano tem liderado
LLM Nano has been leading is researching
quais
2D
avanços
material and
recentes
technology.
podem impactar
What recent breakthroughs can impact AI used in the financial sector?
Inicialmente, agradecer o convite,
Thank
né,
you
para
so much
participar
for
desse
this
painel.
invitation.
É tema, assim, talvez pouco árido.
This is an already topic or a bit different, so to speak.
Nesses primeiros minutos, eu ia compartilhar.
So, in my first comment, I would like to share some slides so that everybody can be on the same
Os
page.
slides.
Could you
Já
please
está
put
aqui.
up on screen the content that I showed you?
Todo mundo me ouve e está vendo os.
Can you hear me and see the slides? All right.
Primeiro, a gente tem que explicar.
Well, we need first to explain
Tá, retorna. Por que o título desse painel
why the title of this panel is Beyond
e
Silicon.
uma maneira interessante de
And an interesting way to show this is by means of this graphic. And this
de lei.
shows what we call the law of Moore.
Ela é uma
This
lei
is
da.
not a law of physics, it's a law pertaining to
Olhando aqui.
technology. Oh, I was looking at the other one. Okay. Okay,
Então,
moving
a lei de
forward.
é uma lei, eu diria, da
This
tecnologia ou da economia.
law is related to economy and technology.
De que forma a indústria
It describes how microelectronics has developed over
como ela precisa
these last 50 years and how this must be developed
para
in the
que eles
future
possam continuar vendendo
so that they can continue selling more and more powerful computers and devices and
o poder
etc.
computacional, né, de processador.
Computation power of these computers and
O número
processors
de elementos de
have to do with the number of elements present in them, that are present in them, like the transistors.
eu vou falar que
Maybe you might have heard of it, that the logic followed by these computers is a Boolean one, a Boolean logic or a binary logic
então
governed by zeros and ones. So there are small elements called transistors,
passam ou não passam uma corrente elétrica.
and they might conduct a electric current or not.
Se ele não passa,
If this is conducting, it is 1. If this is not conducting, this is 0.
computador
So these are the main elements of a computer, and this is made of silicon.
de silício há, enfim, mais de 50 anos.
It's been like this for the last 50 years. And as you can see here in this graphic, the number of transistors in every type of processor increases in an exponential manner over time.
Dobra, multiplica.
So basically, it doubles every year.
E essa lei, como vocês estão vendo, ela tem
And the Moore's law has been followed religiously, so to speak, for many, many years.
Então você está colocando cada vez mais transistores.
So we are adding more and more transistors to a board, and we know that computers are not getting bigger, they're actually getting smaller.
O tamanho de cada transistor
So the size of these transistors
esse, o nome
are actually getting smaller. So this is
conseguir
the
fazer.
game for the microelectronics. You can manufacture silicon transistors at a smaller scale.
Qual é o limite para isso? Então,
And what's the limit?
tem limites físicos muito
Of course, there will be physical limits for this. You cannot reduce this to atomic dimensions.
Então, de certa maneira, todo mundo nessa indústria já sabe
So in this industry, basically everyone knows that this is silicon-based technology is limited. There will be an end.
a gente está nessa
And at this point, we are at this crossways, and we are trying to understand the technologies that might succeed in.
aprofundando um pouco mais, quer dizer, então isso é o que a gente chama dos nós tecnológicos
And
da
so these are the technological nodes of microelectronics, and they are described by a unit of measurement
Então, agora já
from micro to nanometer or 1 billionths of in nanometers as well, because we have this ability in microelectronics, because we're trying to design these silicon-based circuits at a greater precision,
mais fina, com linhas
at a finer manner,
e
with longer lines, and this will find its limit one day.
nessa figura vocês já estão vendo que
And in this figure, you will see that there are other approaches. The traditional approach was to design this on a surface, and that's what we call a bidimensional geometry.
se virar nos 30 já
Now they have to deal with that in order to design something more complex, such as stacking transistors or in three-dimensional design, so that they can still follow the Moore's law
eu vou voltar um pouco
pattern.
daqui a pouco para ver quais são
I'll go back to this to show you the alternatives for the end of the Moore's law. And it's important to show these geopolitical implications involved in this issue.
hoje em dia são
Nowadays,
praticamente dois países do mundo
there are basically two countries in the world, Taiwan and South Korea. The US is actually trying to resume these activities with Intel, but there are basically only two countries that can um, produce these most advanced chips, both in South Korea and in Taiwan. Because of the pandemic, there was a shortage of semiconductors, even for automotive segments. In many countries, drew the conclusion that this is a very risky investment, strategically speaking,
começaram a trazer de volta
and they started
para
to
retomar
invest again
de fabricar semicondutores.
in manufacturing their own semiconductors. China and the US, they all did that.
Enfim, que existe essencialmente bloqueio
And there was
equipamentos para a China.
there was this blocking on these Chinese companies so that they would no longer import this.
Equipamentos para produção de chips, né? Então, existe uma questão geopolítica
There is this
atual,
whole geopolitical issue
uma crise
which
também, mas
shows that there is a current crisis and a need for a strategy and opportunities for Brazil as well. So we can be a player, although we see this economic blockade on these countries.
é guerra dos chips, né?
So this is the chip war,
Muitas vezes aplicada
or the war of chips, because we are trying to describe this dispute between China and the US
tem sido chamado a produção de semicondutores
and the production of semiconductors, which is now this century's oil. So I'd like to draw your attention to two things. First, it's important to keep our national competitiveness in this field.
sintoma ou digamos
And one of the clear symptoms of this is that there are possibilities to offer technological blockades to import technology or even basic inputs such as GPU boards for AI, such as those used in NVIDIA.
passado ainda no governo
Last year, you still having this under the Biden government, the U.S. passed a regulation limiting the importing of
para inteligência
chips
artificial de
for AI GPU boards
classes de países, quer dizer, uma
to
classe de
different sorts of countries. For example, one of the classes is the friendly countries, and there is limited exporting. And there is this full blockade, the second class, and Brazil is part of this third class, where there is this limited number
GPUs que podem
of GPUs that can be exported.
o Brasil
Of course, Brazil tries to dialogue and convince them so as to revoke this law. But if this remains, this will significantly impact our development, and this must be at the forefront of everything.
And from the point of view, and the federal government knows that, Brazil has to go back, has to invest again in that area. Because we say a lot that Brazil would have lost the train for microelectronics. So this train goes round in circles. So the capacity to produce microprocessors enables others and will enable new technologies that go beyond Silicon Valley. So we have to be ready when these technologies come to place. So this is my last slide, and that's when I show this crossroads that we are right now. So coming from right to left, so we call this move that is based on silicon. And we are going through a point right now with these limitations, and we have also alternatives. Alternatives that it's in the pink line is to continue on silicon technology, try to create new technologies, even bolder technologies. And this is what we call more of Moore laws. Some other technologies I can't see from here. So photonic, bidimensional material, neuromorphic computing, that's a kind of computer that tries to emulate the behavior of human brain. That still are things that point to the future. But because of this silicon, we know that some of them will win in a near future. And that's the first message I would like to show, just to give you the information about the topic, and now we are going to talk about it. Okay, so let's talk about future. Vânia, how the banks work, so how are they getting ready to integrate new processing at alternatives like alternative material chips? Can you hear me? Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation of being here. And how do we deal with modernization? It's what Rodrigo mentioned. We must get ready for this moment. At Banco do Brasil, it's an important front about modernizing our system. We really try to push it forward. And we truly believe that it solves two things. It solves our current problems and also makes us get ready for the new technologies. When we talk about current problems, we have the time to market. Most systems today are a legacy system in which it's difficult to make changes. These are not easy things to do, so they must go through testing, and this is not a quick thing to do. So modernizing today makes a lot of sense. When we speak of security, technologies are not compatible with the patterns that we have today. When we talk about PCI, for instance, they're not compatible. And when we talk about detection of fraud in real time with AI, the legacy systems are not compatible. If you try to do it, it's going to be hard. It will take a long time. So it makes a lot of sense today to modernize our system. Banks have been focusing on that. And in the first quarter, we closed with 7,000 solutions and applications rolling out in cloud. And that represents millions and millions of operates for our clients every day. And this number is 20% higher than last year. So we've been focusing and incrementing, and like Professor mentioned, that's the way to get ready for the future. When we reach these two technologies, having a good system is like pointless because they will not connect, they don't talk. So that's a necessary step because we're getting ready when these new technologies come and they move forward, and we are at the right moment. When you talk about alternatives, chips with embarked AI for payment devices, that's very unlikely to be use with technology like the legacies that we have. They need a free system so that they can connect to modern APIs. That's essential. And the Banco do Brasil works with a hybrid architecture. We work with private cloud and public cloud in a way that we have to choose. We can choose the best solutions for our clients.
Banco gigantesco, né?
And it's a huge bank, right? Yes, more than 200 years.
A Gerdau Graphene é uma
Okay, Gerdau Graphene is a Brazilian fintech that we're talking about the solutions with graphene and many solutions. So as we cannot explore that to make new electronic components for computing, and what are the challenges for its adoption on a large scale? Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
pouquinho baixo.
Agora sim? Estava desligado aqui. Boa tarde, então, primeiramente, obrigada.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's such a great pleasure to be here. And it's great to be here to talk about this topic that it's about the future, but it's the development takes place now, otherwise we'll never reach that future. So we work with graphene for many applications, none of which are thinking about electronics nowadays. But graphene is a bidimensional material and nano biodimensional material. And what is that? It comes to our class of materials that we showed, and we have this journey for development with new technologies for electronic chips. So for this application, if we have graphene with an atomic layer of carbon that is like close to an atom, so it's 1 nanometer. That means 1 million is of a meter. So on thickness, it's 1 nanometer, but they can have in microns of sizes. So that's why we say it's bidimensional. So we always talk about the area of graphene.
E essas propriedades
And these properties, as it is a carbon material
que usa ali orbitais SP2, desculpa aqui pouco
that use SP2, I apologize about the terminology that we are using.
Com o Rodrigo, é que propicia as
It's because
propriedades
it enables all properties of that material to have it's highly electrical, thermal, and mobility as well. All these properties are way above silicon.
com candidato, né?
So it's a great candidate for this development, not only graphene.
Sozinho, ele sempre
And it's only by itself. It's always along with other material for that development, for this new technology that we hope to use in transmission of data and capacities of data processing, that we are reaching the limit with the current technologies, silicon-based.
hoje, não só do grafeno, mas
And speaking of graphene and other materials,
preço não é
it's not about price, it's not about cost.
necessariamente
And not necessarily it's about the production technology of that material, because we have many technologies that will be scaled
que a aplicação vai sendo desenvolvida.
just like the applications are developed. So we have a technological barrier. It's still under development. It's in a transition from the academia to the market. And most that they dominate today, many research centers are developing these technologies, and how do we make the electric contact and they can be broadcasted the right way. The whole architecture that it's necessary with the microelectronic devices. So to advance this use of AI and data processing, we must go through this advance of technology and
Dos
materials.
engenheiros, dos
We
físicos, dos
need
químicos.
engineers, the physicists,
Então, a adoção disso no mercado
and engineers. So we depend on technology. So in this case, it's not about price or cost. It's about which technology that it will reach. And Rodrigo mentioned we have different journeys for development.
que ele mostrou, a gente
And the last graph that he showed, we are still using with silicon
aplicação junto com o
so that we can use along with that. And there are others that they take different lines. So quantum with different data processing that you go through the light. So we have many options. And the development of new materials will be attached, connected to that. We have more technical solutions in Brazil. We have
de desenvolvimento,
full capacity to develop new products and to develop everything that is connected
melhorados, mas
and
acho que
can be improved.
falar pouco
But that is for another question. So we are talking now how we can work so that we do not miss this train. We missed the first one with conductors. We had technology, we had the know-how, but we have plenty of conditions so that we do not miss the
Obrigada
next
pelas respostas.
train. Thank you for your answers.
Além das iniciativas atuais, o Banco do Brasil tem planos para explorar outros
Does Brazil have plans to explore other emerging technologies like quantum computing?
Sim, nós
Absolutely.
planos, né? E
We
estamos,
have plans and we are getting ready for that.
assim,
So again,
Rodrigo
just
falou,
like Rodrigo mentioned,
todo mundo tem que se preparar.
everybody should get ready for this moment. And this is what we've been doing. We've been studying,
Pesquisando para
doing
gerar uma
research so that we can have a new institutional culture. And along quantum computing, we have a quantum research center. Rodrigo, it's not even by far the research that you do,
tem se estudado
but we've been studying that in the academia.
no banco,
So we bring that to the bank.
estudam de tudo.
And they study everything from difference of bits and qubits, algorithms change or not change, properties, overlapping, like tangling, noise. So this group studies and does a publication within the bank that is quite important, and we need that.
As pesquisas vão seguindo e
As research move on, we have to follow because it shouldn't be a surprise when it really becomes real, because so we are following.
tem vários
And then publicizing. There are many guildas in the bank. We have the hands-on.
no ano passado nós fizemos
Last year, we had a challenge of the quantum cycle that we showed lots of content, and there was an emulation using this and with companies that enable that. And it's really nice because it brings engagement. People really like it when it's something hands-on.
e também nessa linha da
And
divulgação
then along publication,
faz todos
Banco do Brasil
W, que é o
does the BBDW. It's the Banco do Brasil Digital Week. It's the largest technology and digital technology event.
outubro do ano
It
passado.
was last October with more than 25,000 participants. So that was a moment that we used with our partnerships and academia
Desses
to
estudos, né, do que nós
talk about these studies and what we've been
também
doing.
nessa linha da gente,
And also along this line to
de
follow,
fato,
to
a gente vê assim,
see,
a gente precisa
we
ter esse
say that, okay, we must have these new technologies on our radar.
radar, a gente
And
também
speaking
não
of radar, we actually have a radar we call trend radar. That these are studies that Banco do Brasil does and we follow,
coloca isso num radar,
and we
onde a gente
place that under the radar really. And they said, okay, so adopt that. This is
já está
this is
maduro,
ready. It's mature enough. You can use it.
experimente, esse
Then we have Spademensch. So this one you just watch and monitor. And we have all these studies and materials in this radar for technological trends. It's a public material, and the 2025 was published here at FEBRABAN, and I invite you all to learn about that.
saia no bb.com
So it's brazilbank.com.br/trends,
rico, atualizado todos os anos.
and you can use that every year, and it makes a lot of sense to follow that,
Pesquisa vai,
because otherwise research moves forward, but when the moments that companies are going to learn about that, they don't. So that's why we have to follow. It must be in our radar. And Brazil Bank invests in information, research, study, education, so that we can move forward, both for our technological
na
solutions,
linha de pesquisa.
but also in
No
research.
ano passado, foram investidos 8,5
Last year, we invested 8.5 million in technology. In the first quarter this year, 1.8 billion.
desde 2016.
And since 2016, we've invested 43.1 billion reais in
É bastante
research.
investimento.
That's a lot of investment, right? Rodrigo, please tell us how the cooperations between institutions of research and companies in the financial sector can accelerate discovery and adoption of new materials like silicon conductors in practical applications. Great question. Before telling you the how, I'll tell you the why. It's non-trivial question because how can a financial company, how could that be interested in in semiconductors or in quantum computing? Not to mention the fact that, as you mentioned before, that you are paying attention on things that might come to the future. So it's a more immediate future. that a company can do that, they're not interested in their core business
retorno pouco
and
mais.
something that have like a more immediate return.
Primeiro,
Well, first, there are two things I would like to say. So AI is easier to talk about. It's important. It's here to stay. But then, if you say that there is a connection of
esses chips muito
AI, that you have very advanced chips and NVIDIA, that Brazil can have a great way to go.
long shot, como a gente diz, né? É muito difícil vender dessa
It's
forma.
really hard to sell like that. On the other hand, quantum computer, it's one of those paradigms that can come up and are already doing that.
É uma área em que, de fato, várias empresas do setor financeiro ao redor do mundo estão investindo pesadamente nisso, né? E a razão é a seguinte: primeiro, deixa eu dar um passo atrás e explicar o que é em 30 segundos, né? Eu espero que não tenha nenhum físico aqui na plateia. Mas assim, eu falei do bit transistor, que é 0 ou 1, né? Passa ou não passa a corrente, né? O que a computação quântica oferece, e o que a gente chama de qubit, que são esses bits quânticos, né? É uma outra forma de você armazenar e trabalhar com a informação, né? Em vez agora de ser binário, de ser 0 ou 1, existe um objeto qualquer que pode ser, sei lá, fisicamente pode ser realizado de várias formas. O circuito supercondutor, o spin de um elétron, não importa. Mas tem um objeto que pode estar num estado quântico, e o estado quântico ele tem uma capacidade, uma característica dele poder estar numa mistura, né, entre zeros e 1. Ele não é só 0, não é só 1, mas é o que a gente chama na matemática de combinação linear entre 0 e 1. Né, ou uma mistura, um emaranhamento entre zeros e 1. Né? Então, essa nova maneira de armazenar e operar, né, informação, ela traz capacidades interessantes para algumas áreas em que já se demonstrou que a computação quântica ela é muito mais eficiente do que a computação clássica, é justamente a área de criptografia, que tem tudo a ver com segurança cibernética. Então, é por isso que empresas do setor financeiro e também da área, setores de defesa, né, são muito interessados nos desenvolvimentos de computação quântica. Então, eu vejo assim uma oportunidade aí, porque o Brasil também, assim como os outros países, está iniciando, né, uma jornada ou um programa, uma iniciativa nacional em tecnologias quânticas em geral, computação quântica em particular. Agora, trazendo também um pouco para a área de semicondutores, eu também vejo uma oportunidade interessante, porque a gente tem uma indústria de semicondutores aqui no Brasil, mas ela é muito focada na parte da cadeia, que é design, né, desenhar circuitos, e na parte final, que é o encapsulamento, mas justamente a fábrica silício ou outros materiais, o Brasil tem um gargalo, um déficit aí. E aí, junto com esse reconhecimento, que é uma área que está rejuvenescendo agora, né, com essas novas possibilidades, eu vejo oportunidades aí justamente de investir em algo que eu acho que essa área de semicondutores tem muito potencial. Então, isso é mais ou menos por quê. Agora, rapidamente sobre como, né, de que forma, os mecanismos, acho que mais para frente eu também vou poder me aprofundar. Mas, por exemplo, em parceria com universidades, você o setor financeiro já há casos disso. Você pode ter uma participação societária ou uma outra possibilidade é investir em universidades ou centros de pesquisas como o Elinano, o CNPq, onde eu trabalho, que fomentam áreas fundamentais assim para o Brasil, que são ligadas à tecnologia, que são empresas de deep tech, por exemplo, né? Onde você assim, é um nicho que necessita de tem muitas necessidades, porque são empresas que necessitam de tecnologias muito sofisticadas para avançar, né? Então necessitam de um investimento inicial muito grande. Lá onde eu trabalho no CNPq, nós temos inclusive um programa de aceleração de deep techs que justamente tem o objetivo de avançar o país nessa área no sentido de abrir as instalações que são complexas e caras para essas empresas, para que elas possam acelerar a tecnologia. Quer dizer, o envolvimento, não só de empresas do setor financeiro, mas de outras empresas que possam financiar esse processo, acho que também é uma coisa que pode gerar benefícios para todos os lados. Então, tem alguns mecanismos interessantes que a gente consegue vislumbrar.
Valdirene, você disse recentemente que o grafeno hoje é uma realidade comercial que já ultrapassou a escala experimental dos laboratórios. Esse é um mercado em expansão, avaliado em bilhões de dólares. Você pode compartilhar mais detalhes sobre o roadmap da Gerdau Graphene e seus impactos na economia?
Bom, sim. Com certeza o grafeno, em várias aplicações, ele já rompeu essa barreira de escala da academia para a indústria, da adoção comercial, e ele já está no mercado hoje. Mas, como tantos outros nanomateriais, novos materiais, nós temos um caminho de desenvolvimento desde a descoberta de um material, desenvolvimento das suas aplicações e adoção dele em várias dessas frentes, né? Então, para alguns produtos, como por exemplo, hoje nós já temos, inclusive no Brasil, artefatos de concreto usando grafeno, nós já vendemos soluções para isso, embalagens plásticas usando grafeno. É possível comprar uma tinta para pintar o piso da sua casa hoje, uma tinta que já tem grafeno com potencial. Então, hoje a Gerdau Graphene tem desenvolvimento tecnológico de aditivos com grafeno. Grafeno é incorporado em soluções aquosas, solventes ou polímeros para aplicação na área de plásticos, de tintas e de concreto. Então, nós temos tecnologia desenvolvida para acessar um mercado de em torno de 1,5 bi de dólar. Então, não é o mercado do grafeno em si, mas eu estou falando do mercado que eu consigo acessar com essas tecnologias das tintas, dos plásticos, dos revestimentos ou do concreto. E sempre agregando as propriedades do grafeno ligadas à microeletrônica, mas ele traz ganhos expressivos de propriedades mecânicas, de propriedade de barreira, de resistência a processos corrosivos, de resistência ao UV. Então, ele é candidato à aplicação em várias áreas do setor, né, em várias áreas industriais, não só ali para a área de microeletrônica, e para muitas dessas áreas ele já está no mercado. Então, nosso roadmap, ele inicia trazendo o grafeno, desenvolvendo soluções em escala industrial, e a gente vai avançar em tecnologias de acordo com o que o mercado também avança e a gente consegue desenvolver tecnologias. Hoje não temos um produto para aplicação em semicondutores. É o mercado que está em desenvolvimento das tecnologias estão ainda nesse estágio de maturidade tecnológica, na transição da academia, das primeiras startups em desenvolvimento. E eu reforço aqui um pouco a fala do Rodrigo na pergunta anterior, da necessidade dos usuários finais, de quem precisa dessa tecnologia, apoiar esse desenvolvimento, seja na startup ou seja no centro de pesquisa. Para termos autonomia como país e como empresa, de ter domínio tecnológico para tecnologias que cada vez mais serão customizadas para a necessidade de cada um, a gente precisa investir num certo estágio de maturidade antes dela estar pronta. Depois que ela está pronta, ela foi finalizada e foi para o mercado, ela foi desenvolvida com o intuito de atender alguém. Será que é a minha empresa? Será que é a minha necessidade? Né? Então, hoje, para várias aplicações, nós não temos barreira nem técnica de desenvolvimento e nem econômica. Hoje, toda a embalagem de prego no mercado da Gerdau tem grafeno nessa embalagem. Então, com o grafeno foi possível reduzir 25% da espessura desse plástico, melhorar as propriedades mecânicas e diminuir 40% das perdas de processo ao longo. A Gerdau tem 124 anos como empresa. Então, a gente levou então, é um exemplo que com desenvolvimento e com esforço, com empenho, é muito singelo falar da embalagem do plástico quando a gente está aqui falando desenvolvidas, né, falando de futuro, de inteligência
artificial,
de computação quântica, e, de novo, sem
And
desenvolver
once again,
materiais, a gente não
without developing materials, we cannot move
tiver as
forward.
pontas da
And
cadeia
if we do
juntas,
not have all
sempre vai
these
esperar
ends of this chain working
que foi
together,
feito
we will
para
always
outro ou para o
want
domínio
this
tecnológico.
ready solution or something that will be mastered by another country so that we can
O nosso
incorporate
roadmap
into
ele
our roadmap. So our roadmap
condutoras
will
também, que é
also deal with the
necessidade para essas
semiconducting
frentes, mas hoje
paints.
essas
But now
tecnologias
this
que eu
is
comentei
based
já tem
on the
maturidade
technology
para o
that I have
mercado
mentioned,
na área de
because this is the
concreto,
level of maturity that we have in
polímeros,
terms of
que tem
polymers,
dados
paints, and also
com
concrete. So
artificial
it
e
has
com
to do with
computação,
AI,
porque
computing, data,
precisamos cada
and we
vez
do
mais de mais
need
data centers,
more
de
data
materiais
centers
também que dissipam melhor
and
calor,
materials that
porque
can
para a gente
dissipate the heat in a
consumir muita
better fashion. So because we also consume
hoje
a
dos
lot of
gargalos,
energy. This is
inclusive,
one of
de
our
ampliar
bottlenecks. By the
armazenamento de
way,
dados e de a
data
gente ter essa velocidade
storage,
de tratamento
also
de
we
dados, além
need
do que a
more
gente já falou aqui dos
speed when we
chips,
do that.
a gente
Apart from the chips, as I said,
então,
we
quando
also need to have this technology for our data centers.
modula a
Once, for
temperatura
example, the
ambiente,
concrete can also modulate
investimento
the
que
environment in the room,
a
and it
temperatura
can
dessa
also
sala,
reduce
eu posso ter polímero usando dentro,
temperature in this
né, de
room, or
toda
a
a caixa
polymer
ali
that
que
can
vai armazenar
also
esses chips que ele
will
dissipa,
also store these
hoje ele é
chips,
isolante,
which
mas
will also dissipate
pode
this
melhorar mais essa
uh,
velocidade de
heat,
processamento.
or also can isolate,
Então, a
have
gente
this
tem a
insulation
visão de
effect.
desenvolvimento de materiais,
So we also developed graphene for
né, e óbvio,
different and
que a gente está
multiple
falando
technological
da área da
applications, and we
computação
are
e da
talking about
necessidade de
computing,
ter
and this need
ecossistema
for
trabalhando em
having this
conjunto
whole
para avançarmos
ecosystem working
como país
harmoniously so that we can advance as a
tecnologia
country,
e darmos um salto
so that
daqui
we
30,
can
40 anos, mas se a gente não
go
começa
to the
agora, a gente
next
não chega lá.
level, so that we in 30 years
pega o
we can
bonde.
be ahead of them.
Bom, agora essa pergunta é para todos vocês. Com base na experiência que vocês têm,
Also, based on our
as
experience,
empresas
the
com
relationship
universidades
with
e centros de
with our
pesquisa
companies
avançada é
with
um bom jeito de
advanced
aumentar a
research centers
competitividade
and
das
other ways. This is
empresas?
a good way to
Patentes podem
increase
gerar
your
liquidez para os negócios?
your
E existe um modelo para
competitiveness.
esse tipo de
And is there a
investimento?
model for us
Vânia,
to
começa por você.
apply this business model?
A gente vê assim que a gente
And
vê
we
e
also
acredita
saw
muito
that
que essa
we do
proximidade
believe that this
das
proximity
empresas
between
com a
companies and
academia,
the
as
academia
universidades são
and
essenciais, né?
universities are
No
essential.
BBDW mesmo,
So
esse
in
evento que eu falei que o banco
BBDW,
fez no
this
final do
event
ano
held by
passado, esse
our
ano nós
bank
vamos
last
ter de
year, and
novo,
again
com
we
mais
will
de
do it this
25 mil
year.
pessoas,
Over 25 people will attend this event.
e a
This is a
gente
free
teve uma
event, by the way.
participação enorme de
And we
universidades,
also see universities, research
eles
centers,
participando de
and we
workshops, de
see that they
cursos, de
participate at
hackathons, de
our
mentorias. Então, ali
mentorship sessions and
uma
also
proximidade
workshops.
muito
So
grande,
this
além
causes
dessas
us to
outras
draw us closer
pesquisas
to one another,
que nós fazemos.
so
E a
that they
gente
can get to
vê
know what
que
we
é
are
um
doing.
movimento de mão dupla.
And this is
A
a
academia
two-way
vê que
movement.
hoje é preciso estar próximo
The academia also sees that it's important to have this partnership with these companies, and companies also perceive how important it is to be closely
do Brasil tem
working with them. And with MIT and Gartner, for example,
vantagem para a gente no dia a
they
dia.
also have this big advantage
Problemas bem
because we
complexos, né?
can
Porque
also
eles
solve
têm uma
together these
abrangência
complex problems because
grande, eles
they
vêm,
also have this wide
então sempre
coverage
nos
when it
ajudam
comes
muito.
to problem
E
solving,
aí,
so they
quando
help us a great deal.
patentes, né?
And
Por
when it comes to
exemplo, a gente
patents,
vê
for
que as
example,
empresas elas podem se
we
beneficiar de
see
patentes
that
de
the
diversas.
companies can benefit from
Aí eu vou
them
dar
in
um
different
exemplo um pouco
manners. I'm
diferente
going
do
to give
Banco
you
do
an
Brasil, que
example
envolve o
because at
nosso
the
conglomerado.
Brazil Bank, we are a company that has this big group, and the Patagonia Bank, for example, they have their own app that is rolled out based on the technology used by the engine of our app, which is one of our patents. This is a very good solution, and this is our group that is actually finding profitability on the technology that we developed. And there are other ways for this also to add value to the companies that have developed them.
Valdirene, e você? O que você pensa?
And what about you, Valdilene? Can you please
A
explain what you
interação
think?
da indústria, das instituições privadas, ou vou dizer do usuário final, né, porque também pode ser uma instituição pública, com a academia, com centros de pesquisa, é fundamental.
Research centers and public institutions, well, technological advancement is key.
A indústria, ela é mais
So
alongada
this
do que,
interaction between them, it can take longer. For
né, tô aqui
example, in
dentro
the
da
case
casa
of
da
the
Gerdau que
steel, for
vende
example,
aço.
I am part of a
Tecnologias
steel
muito
selling company.
antigas, que óbvio que a gente continua tendo inovação,
Of course, we have
mas
development,
como se produzir
we
uma
have
liga, como trabalhar uma
innovation, and
liga,
how to use, for
e
example,
essa
these
transição não está
joints.
mais da
Okay, but
academia para
this
a
is no
indústria.
longer part of
Mas
the
quando nós estamos falando de
academic studies
materiais
because
que
this
a
has
gente ainda
already
está
been long
estudando na
developed.
ciência, E
But as we
nanotecnologia
are
também já está
studying this in
paralela ali
science, we
andando.
see
Hoje a
that
gente tem
technology
ciência e tecnologia
is
caminhando.
going hand in hand
Então, a gente
with
continua
technology
estudando
and
com
industry
aplicações que já estão
applications.
no
So we
mercado.
also see
Então,
the
essa interação ela é
existing
fundamental, não
applications,
só para
and this is
desenvolver, mas para
fundamental not only
manter
for
isso vivo,
development, but also to keep
depois
it
sendo
alive,
aplicado e
so
voltar.
that it can be applicable, and
Então, no
then
caso da
we
Gerdau-Grafene,
can have
todos os
it
nossos
back in development again. So when
projetos em
the case
parceria
of
com centros de
graphene,
pesquisa.
we developed our products with research
A
centers,
lei de
and in
inovação que
Brazil,
facilita muito
besides
isso, a
this
gente ao longo do
innovation,
tempo
of
viemos
course, we
melhorando
see that
muito
we have been
essa relação
improving this
indústria-centro de
relationship
pesquisa,
between
as
research
questões de
centers
propriedade
and the
intelectual e de
academia, and
patente muito bem
things
resolvidas
related
entre
to
as
patents
partes,
and the
né?
technological
Todos
properties, they have
os em
been all
parceria,
settled.
usando tecnologia.
All these products were
Por exemplo,
produced
então eu tive
collectively
parte dos
between
produtos
our
com
partners and ourselves,
então, quando eu
and
faço
parts
um projeto
of our budget, it was also
lá
allocated
no
to that.
CNPq ou
And at CNPq or Senai or
na
at the University
UFMG
of São Paulo,
ou
the
numa
Federal
qualquer outra
University
universidade
of
ou centro de
Minas Gerais
pesquisa,
or
um
other
terço
research
desse
centers,
recurso
one third of
é
all the
subsidiado pelo
resources
governo, porque
is
ele
actually
entende
subsidized by
que é um
the
risco
very government,
tecnológico, ele
because
investe junto
we
nisso.
also see
E a patente ela é importante não
that
só
this is important for patents not only to bring
proteger o
us this
mercado que
liquidity, but
você
also to
precisa
protect the
proteger para a
market,
sua
because we need to
tecnologia,
protect the
né?
market
Porque é
for that
muito
specific
recurso,
technology,
muito
because
tempo investido
sometimes
no desenvolvimento,
we are investing
depois
time
você
and
ter
money in certain
concorrente que
technology
pode
for
copiar
a
o seu produto
competitor
e não
simply
passar por
copy your product without and also skipping this
se vale
development
a pena
stage.
patentear ou não
So
é
if this
crucial,
is about, for example,
mas também
settling the patent process or not, we
que podem ser
understand that there are
licenciadas
some
também é
some
importante
solutions that are
para que a
ready to be
empresa possa
used,
trabalhar e
so
colocar.
that we can start
Então,
using them right away so as to launch our
inovação
products
ela é
to
muito
the
importante.
market.
Nossas
And this
universidades
is very important. For example,
fora do
universities here
Brasil,
in
outras
Brazil and
universidades,
abroad,
têm
of
bancos
course,
de patentes
they have these patent banks, and
tecnológicas
sometimes they
que
have
têm
these
um caminho
technological
andado, que a gente não
solutions
precisa
that
começar.
are already more advanced. So we do not need to start
Precisamos
to
trazer soluções.
reinvent the wheel or to start from scratch for every single solution that we need.
Faço
So
isso.
I do believe in that, and Gerdau Graphene does that as well. We have these partnerships with different research centers and universities, where we have 7 projects with universities and research centers, so that we can develop the products that we desire, so that we do not have to build everything inside our companies, the whole lab structure, because it doesn't make sense if we already have this available in other places. So we are just wanted to put this into production stages in the market, so that we can spend our time in what really matters.
Essa pergunta é muito recorrente.
And this is a recurring question, by the way.
Não sou tão jovem assim.
I'm not that young, and since I am 20 years old, maybe, I've been part of panels or watching panels like this. And why does Brazil have this difficulty? Maybe we are improving this field, but we still find some troubles when it comes to this relationship between companies and universities. Well, Brazil is the 13th country when it comes to scientific production, the production of scientific articles and patents. It's about maybe we are in the 53rd position in this ranking. So we have this difficulty to generate knowledge and also to apply this knowledge. So this is a complex problem because there is no obvious explanation. There is no simple explanation for that, by the way. And many different things have been tried over the years. But there is this aspect that it's part of our culture,
Das empresas aqui,
part of our corporate culture, which is actually built under difficult conditions because we have these high interest rates, this background with high inflation rates. So we have this difficulty in investing in new technologies that can offer these big risks as well, of course. But there is the other side also that needs to be considered in this relationship between these two parties. That means that we need to understand, especially when it comes to education. This is too academic sometimes. Uh, we miss having this clearer, more interesting view directed to projects, design, and applications, which would create this better interface with the production sector.
mencionou.
And Valdilene also mentioned Embrapia. This is a very interesting mechanism. And I also noticed that some companies do not know that this exists, but that we have this main investment. Half of this fund actually dedicated to investment is actually reimbursable because we see that they
emprestados para empresas.
are really lent to companies so that they can develop their own technologies. Of course, we have the Brazilian Development Bank. They also play a very important role. So there are pathways to be followed, yes, but we still needed to develop our culture on both sides, on in the corporate side and the academic side, in both inside the universities and research centers. We are approaching the end of this panel. We still have some minutes for your final remarks. So I'd like to hear from you about how we could be positioned as a protagonist in the application of emerging technologies, especially when it comes to global demands for new hardware platforms, such as economic viability and also sustainability. Please, Orleni, you can start. Good question. How can we as a country transform this situation into development and interaction, as we have mentioned here? Well, public policies are very important. They are the North Star for this. There are already some that are working towards achieving this goal, but we also have to rely on this culture, and institutions must work together. Our system must work together. This is not something like that we have to start at academia and then develop this in another stage. No, we have to work with mechanisms where we can have in different stages along this maturity level. We can start, for example, at our labs in the universities, and we should not stop producing academic articles because it's the basis for science. Otherwise, we're never going to have the patents that we want. And we also needed to build more, to have more patents. We also needed to have this relationship in order to protect these patent because this is a technology of ours, but also because we want to protect our market. So we need to do this, and the very industry also needs to participate in that, needs to work closely with universities. The universities will be able to develop these technologies that the companies really need. And also we needed to direct these public policies, also giving the right subsidies and also the subsidized actions so that we can be also strengthening and innovating our initiatives. And as universities and research centers and institutions, we needed to use them and see where improvements must be made. So we needed to, of course, have more resources. So because the level of resources in Brazil is not the same as the one that we find in other countries, but only if we work collectively, we will not get there on our own.
Quando a gente
So when we talk about protagonism, I would like to just to give a side comment. When we talk about protagonism being at this event,
fala em sistema
and when we talk about Brazilian finance system, it's the world leader in banking technology. When we talk about being the protagonist, we cannot forget that.
como ser
And then Brazil as being the protagonist in these new developments, I think that there are three important points. The first one is R&D. Research is everything, it's the base for everything. So that's where we need heavy investment to make that lift off, being with fiscal incentives, subsidies, PPPs, but this is necessary. Another important point is
da escola,
to strengthen this relationship with academia and companies. This exchange brings, it's a win-win situation. There's no way out. And the other one is like foment to startups, because startups help to speed up these technologies. So fostering this is very important. So we have BP Vent, this program in Brazil, where banks invest in fintechs to help so that we can move forward with quick solutions. So these are the three main important points, and that can help Brazil along this journey to keep being as the leader. Rodrigo, how about you?
Olha para o Brasil e é outro lugar comum comparar.
It's another common sense to compare Brazil and Korea and other countries. So why these countries take like giant leaps, like China? China is a different case, and Brazil is still afraid of taking that leap of faith.
tanto mistério.
There's not much mystery there. I'd even go before R&D. You have to invent in public education of high quality. So 80–90% of the country is out of any expectations out of the educational system. They don't participate. You have to bring these people to your side. You have to decrease this inequality through public education with good quality. That's what the recipe that they follow. And then you have to invest in R&D. And you must have a whole environment that would allow all this investment to take place.
Uma escalada grande pela.
So we still have a long way to go, but I'm very optimistic regarding Brazil. I think we have great potential and features
Também nos dão alguma vantagem.
that puts us at the forefront of this race.
Resumidamente, eu acho que é isso.
So in a nutshell, I think that's it. Investment of quality education and then science and technology. I believe that's the base.
Perfeito. E aí a gente vai
Perfect. And then we can get that train again. So on behalf of FEBRABAN, thank you very much for your participation. I would like to thank the audience who have followed us both here and also remotely in these intensive days of very important talks. Thank you very much. See you soon.